The Todd Shapiro Show.
Time to hit the button!
On Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.
Do we have the man, Lance Lambert, on the show?
You sure do.
What's up,
How's it
brother?
going?
What's up, bro?
It's rock and roll. you know the SoCal lingo. That's clutch.
What's up, brah?
What's up, brah?
Hey, brah. Where are you?
I'm home. I'm actually. I was supposed to be flying out tonight for Sydney, Australia, for Hemp Health and Innovation, but they had a little debacle with the schedule. So so I'm grounded. So I get to stay home for a few extra weeks and enjoy the weather out here. No complaints. So I've been on the road for the last 3 weeks. So it's kind of nice to get a little time out.
Good, man. Yeah, we talk everything to do with cannabis, and Boveda.com that never touches the plant helps with its keeping it fresh and moist. Boveda.com, two-way humidity control packs. Tell us about, because I know in the notes Bilal today was telling me you want to talk about the different acts and bills going on with the United States and cannabis. So what's the States Act?
Yeah, so that's exactly. I want to catch up. I spent a better part of last week at our country's capital in Washington, D.C., and I'm actually a member, as is Boveda, our company is, of ATTACH, which is the American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp. And so we went out to lobby with both the Senate and Congress, the first being the States Act. So the States Act actually creates an exception to the Controlled Substances Act for state legal cannabis programs. So the Controlled Substances Act, that ties into the whole scheduling of all kinds of controlled substances, obviously not just cannabis, but cocaine, methamphetamines, heroin, all the classifications. Of course, it does create quite of a hindrance for those states that have legalized cannabis. As we've talked about, 11 states, including D.C., that have legalized adult use in medical, and then 33 states that have legalized some form of cannabis, whether it be only CBD or all the way through with, again, an adult use program. So it's really to help strengthen the 10th Amendment through essentially entrusting States Act to ensure that each state has the rights to determine for itself the best approach to marijuana and its borders. So definitely a good one that was worth having conversations about.
And how familiar are I mean, I guess compliance and stuff, companies would have to get very familiar with the States Act then, anyone who's doing business in that space.
Yeah, it's really the best way I could put it. The companies that do not just touch the plant, but companies like you mentioned, like ourselves, they're an ancillary solution for the industry. A lot of us are very familiar. It is a little tough to keep track state to state, heck, even country to country. But essentially what this is more so about is kind of keeping the feds off of the state's back. So right now, a lot of people in the industry are constantly worrying about if the federal agencies and entities are going to intervene. So that could be obviously specifically DEA would be one that would come to mind amongst others. But being reassured that no, the feds would not come after them because they are following the local rules and regulations as it's set forth in their state. So it would be good for them to already know what's going on. But then again, this is more so focused on peace of mind for them to not worry about that potential getting hit in the back of the head without expecting it, so to speak.
Lance Lambert's on the phone with us from Boveda.com, and it sounds like Lance could be our legal counsel today. I like this. Tell us about the Safe Banking Act.
Yeah, so the Safe Banking Act, that's one that's a bit further along, I'm happy to say. It's still the early stages for the States Act, but the Safe Banking Act is something that has all kinds of support. So this is something you and I have talked about, even just on the side, Todd. But this is still an all-cash industry. Anyone, if you do come to the States, or when you come to the States, I should say, if you legally go into a local dispensary when you're down here in LA, typically 9 out of 10 times it is a cash basis as far as that purchase.
Really? I don't think I ever knew that, to be honest. That you had to go there with good, clean, like American bills, like not like when you say cash, does Visa work?
So no, cash it's one of those like true cash. But
wow.
Having some workaround.
That's like there's this one hamburger joint just north of Toronto, and best hamburger joint. It's on the way up north to a cottage called Weber's, and they only take cash still. And I'm like, That's so weird. Because every time I go there, I go, that's like what drug dealers used to do. They only take cash. And now you're saying there's actually drug shops that only take cash still.
Now, isn't that interesting? So that's exactly. Tell me this, because being of individual has grown up in the American society versus a Canadian society. That's the first thing I think of when someone says we're cash only, and maybe this is my administrative justice days of college. But the first thing my mind goes to is, wow, is this donut shop laundering? Is this burger joint laundering?
Yeah, honest to God.
So that's exactly the way we feel about this industry. Is why would we be a cash only industry when, again, legislation's been updated, constitutions have been updated, acts and regulations have put in place in all these states to where this is a legitimate and legal business. So the workarounds that are going on right now, there are several dispensaries that you do go into that they do have merchant services. So essentially you can pay with a credit card. It's kind of this whole workaround though. So it's through like a third party, maybe like a marketing firm. So it's not really the right way to do it, but it's a situation that many in the industry have been forced into because, again, and it's not even so much the federal, it's not the IRS or the Department of Treasury. What we're learning is it's the banking groups as a whole, more so the publicly traded banks, not to pick on them, but Wells Fargo, B of A, et cetera, that they are very scared of the federal government coming down on them. Because remembering in the U.S. when we had that little crisis back in 2009, 2010, these banks were bailed out by the Fed. So the last thing I want to do is get on the bad graces. So it's more so the banks that are preventing it, and this is where the credit unions have shined. We literally just found a credit union while I was in D.C. There's a credit union out of Washington State that says we do offer services. It's 100% legitimate and legal for us to do. We're able to pick up monies from your clients in these states that we're already within. So solutions coming, but it's still, we need it to be across the board. So that's where the Safe Banking Act comes in and essentially says, it's a bill essentially that aims to prevent banking regulators from penalizing banks working with the cannabis-related businesses. And again, we have it in that verbiage and vernacular because it's not just people that do touch the plant, it's people that don't touch the plant that have issues with banks not allowing them to collect cash or in some instances even closing down their bank accounts.
And Lance, when is this going to change? Because they have made a few adjustments, right?
Yeah, there's constantly, we're moving in the right direction. So that's just to give you a little bit of a summary on my experience out there in D.C. And this is a first ever. I mean, it was very, to your point, having a little bit of legal sense and background. It was quite an experience, but I've never gone and lobbied on the Hill in our, at our state capital. So it was a very interesting experience, but meeting some of these individuals, everything from Don Young, who's a Republican from Alaska, who's pro-cannabis, to Salud Kobajal, who's a representative down here in California, to even representatives from out on the East Coast. Overall, it was a very positive experience and positive feedback. There's very much people that are in support. There's not much as far as opponents or people that are against any of these movements. But keeping in mind that 2/3 of this country does feel that cannabis should be legalized at some level, I think more so the conversations were just around them getting a better understanding of the industry. I had several individuals that rather they be the actual representatives or maybe their legislative assistant or even their regulatory director or legislative director, that they just didn't know how much of a challenge the industry is having. So they are very much ears and eyes open to hear that people are having to take, I referenced an Ocean's 11 scene. I said, this is still an industry where people are having to take down a duffel bag of cash for their local to pay their taxes every month. And we're not talking $5 or $10 grand. I have a friend who pays $75,000 a month in tax to the state of Colorado, and he's having to do that in a full cash scenario, not ACH, not check, not every other luxury that other industries have. So it's one of those where it's like, why? It isn't even a pro-cannabis conversation. It's a pro-safety conversation is really what it comes down to.
Well, yeah, that's interesting because you don't want to be walking around with so much cash. It makes yourselves vulnerable. Do they have to spend a lot of money on security because of that? Like atypically that maybe most businesses wouldn't have to?
100%. And I love how you touched on that. That was another statement that I made. While some people go, okay, cash is kind of a pain. You need to be cognizant of that. it does create a bit of a logistical nightmare. All of a sudden, you do have these private companies that already have excessive amount of tax and overhead. And never mind, we won't even get into 280E, which is a taxation that doesn't allow them to do any business write-offs. But they already have all these challenges. Here, all of a sudden, they need to hire an armored car. They need to have security guards. They need to have closed circuit television on a whole other level, monitoring systems on a whole other level. And that creates an additional expense that, again, to your point, other industries don't have. I mean, you don't have this issue in the tech industry. You don't have it in the real estate industry. You don't have it in the automotive industry. So why would it apply in this legal industry? So things are moving along, though. I'd say the Safe Banking Act, it's going to hit the floor this month. We just announced last week that there are 38 district attorneys across the country that are in support of the Safe Banking Act. So our district attorneys have recognized that this is a safety concern and that we need to address it sooner than later. So we're hoping something will move in the immediate future here, which will be a huge win for the industry as a whole in the U.S.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us. Very knowledgeable stuff, and you definitely don't want anyone working in situations where they're a little nerve-wracking. But I was just thinking too, Lance, wouldn't it be nice to hang out with your friends? I just never seen a guy make it rain before. You know what I mean?
Oh my God, you see it, and it's like I said, it's straight out of the movies. It's very eye-opening. But then again, I mean, nothing has told me it's the same thing with seeing these phenomenal grows. And I think you've toured a few, Todd.
Yep. Where
you just see 1 million square foot, 2 million square foot of canopy of plants that are growing. I mean, it's something that I don't know about you. I never thought I'd see in my life. I'm still just in awe about how things have moved in this industry, how mature. We've talked about in the past, too, being that this industry isn't funded nearly as much as, not to pick on them, but big pharma or even tech in general. We don't have that kind of funding yet. Look at the technology and the innovation that's come out of this industry in just a handful of years, just in the last 3 to 5 years. So it's a lot of fun stuff happening, and that's why we get into investing. I mean, there's so many opportunities, both in Canada, in the U.S., and to be around the world, really. There's opportunities to where if someone feels like they missed out on the cryptocurrency buzz or they missed out on the technology buzz of years past, this is an industry that is thriving, and if you're smart and cognizant about your investment, you could be very successful too. So we're moving everything in the right direction to make this a true reputable industry and lose the stigma and the stereotype associated with cannabis.
There was a stock I held a massive position in, and then I actually sold it all at a decent little gain called Trulieve, and then they had a sort of a negative story out against them today, and it dropped 10%. And that's, I will say, for people investing, though, I think there's a ton of opportunity, but definitely not for the faint of heart, right? With the wild swings, you never know.
It's true. I mean, we saw it. I think I've referenced it before. We no longer have Jeff Sessions, thank goodness, in D.C., but he was, the ultimate of attorney generals, and he was very much caught up in the 80s and 90s and still believed in the DARE program, still believed in this drug war that has cost our country millions of dollars, has sacrificed many lives and livelihoods. But that's a good example of, it's just this old school mentality, but things are changing. You still need to be cognizant, though, of the opportunity and due diligence. And he shot a few cannons over the bow, if you will, over the last couple of years. I remember right when January hit for California to go online, which was technically the beginning of where we at 2019. So it was 1st of 2018. And as soon as California went online, man, all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're going to start taking a look at cannabis again. I mean, literally 35% of the money's tied to investments in this industry on Wall Street and in Toronto. All of a sudden they pulled out. Like, everyone got scared. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, the feds are going to crack down on these U.S. companies. Of course, nothing came of it. The stocks bounced back. But you're right, not for the faint at heart. This isn't commodities. We're not talking about pigskins and soybean and corn stocks here. We're talking about things that are a little volatile. There's still places that are, still companies are trying to find their place in their pecking order, so to speak.
Hey, Lance, you also wanted to talk about the 2018 Farm Bill.
Yeah, that's another thing that while it didn't have as much priority in conversation, this is something that came about. So we have something called the Farm Bill. It talks about everything, really farm-related. as far as the government's concerned, and it's touched twice in a decade. And just so happened the last time was 2014, and then just now in 2018. One thing they did was they actually deschedulized, or actually I should say removed, hemp from the Schedule 1 classification with its brother in THC or cannabis-based plant. And so while it does allow hemp cultivation, the definition and insight around that was a bit vague. So while the USDA is the one that's really tied to the Farm Bill, all of a sudden we found we're starting to get involved with it from a consumption side. So it was starting to be added into rather the nutrient packs or some sort of elements to help with health and wellness. That's when the FDA got involved, not just the USDA. So we're just asking Congress to get a little more detail around what it means to have hemp dropped from Schedule 1, and then what the opportunities are, not just on the textile and commercial side of hemp, but also on the consumption side as a dietary supplement. So they're trying to sort things out in time for the next grow season of 2020.
So much confusion still. At what point will they? I mean, I guess it's going to be such a long process, but at some point, America has got to figure out a way to have one massive bill like Canada did with all the rules and regulations, and just to, like, I saw a stupid story the other day. Some grandmother in Florida got busted for 12 hours in jail because she had a CBD based product. Like, how insane is that?
Oh my gosh! And there are some states I would not, Florida being one of them, the Deep South, aka Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana. You really want to steer clear of, and to your point, not just a THC-based cannabis, but also hemp, which technically has a vast majority of the THC weaned out of it. A lot of these states are stuck in the past, and again, you're hearing these stories. I don't know what it'll take to get a large bill. I mean, that's one thing where I'm not saying Canada's government is perfect.
Nope.
You guys all came together. You all decided to make a majority decision. Here we have so much politics going on that we have all these smaller bills. So it's like we're inching forward instead of taking large leaps. It would be nice. I mean, some of these guys have been going at it. I got to meet Representative Earl Blumenauer, who has been in Congress since before I was born. He first got into Congress in 1973. He's a co-sponsor of the SAFE Banking Act. He's been pro-cannabis since 1973. So we have individuals that have been outspoken about the need for re-legalizing. Because keep in mind, this whole prohibition thing wasn't forever and ever in this country. It came about, in the turn getting into the early 19th century. So it's one of those things where we do still need to continue to put in efforts, and we need to continue to move it towards a bipartisan or nonpartisan topic so we can just get it done and over with, like Canada. You guys made it look so easy. I know it's not perfect, but why can't we do that?
Yeah, what they got to do is during their big Congress meetings and stuff is they got to smoke some joints. They got to they're so tense right around Trump. Everyone's so tense around Trump. You got to get it to the media. You got to get it to all the opposition, and they can just chill out and they'll look at Trump and they'll just they'll chuckle. They'll be like, "All right, we'll get through this, man. All good. We'll be fine." And then just pass it through. It'll be good. Everyone will win out. I'm being serious. Everyone got to chill out in politics, and that's a big part of it.
No, I agree. And, I mean, again, this is going back into politics, and I won't say which camp I got to hear this from, but there was someone in Senate that said, you know what, this is what it comes down to. You have some of these Republicans who have a lot of money, Sheldon being one of them, an individual that happens to own not just the Las Vegas Review-Journal, a newspaper, but also own the Palazzo and Venetian out in Vegas, right? Republican family, Republican through and through, and he pumps a lot of money into DC and a lot of money into politics in general. And he blatantly told any Republicans that voted yes on anything to do with cannabis, they're going to get blacklisted. No longer will they get the big money of the deep pockets. So that's the kind of stuff where I don't even know where his motivation, besides being a very old guy that grew up and lived through Prohibition and was probably pro-Nixon and probably pro-Dare and probably pro-Nancy Reagan. That's totally fine. But wake up. Times are changing. This plant wasn't meant to be illegal in the first place. Times are really changing, not just domestically, but globally. And it's unfortunate, again, that some of these people that are able to manipulate our politics have such influence. So everyone does need to have a little toke or a little edible.
Lance, we love the updates. Lance Lambert from BovedaInc.com. And I'm just amazed in this day. It's like a very common theme whenever we talk, but I'm really just amazed that the old dinosaurs kind of still rule the roost here when it comes to this kind of stuff. And in time, it will change. I mean, and I think that's the one confident thing, that all the activists who have fought for this, and we've seen what's going on in Canada and other countries, and it will happen eventually in yours. We appreciate your thoughts today, Lance Lambert, your knowledge at 805 Lance, BovedaInc.com, Boveda Cannabis with the hashtag. And again, they don't touch the plant, but they help keep it nice and smooth. See you later, my man.
I'll see it. Hey, I'll be out there the first week of June, man. Just booked my next trip to Toronto.
Awesome, dude. Cheers.
Thanks again.
This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.